Welcome, everyone, to the fourth episode of Unlearning and Relearning with Henry-Cameron and Estrella Tinch. Today, we have a dear friend with us, Rachel Pearson. Rachel is an evidential medium, spiritual teacher, mentor, and author. Her book, Started Up, is on Amazon. Is it Books A Million?
Yes, it can be found in.
Okay, and what is the other one? Barnes and Noble, right?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful.
I believe any bookseller.
Okay, very good. But they can
ordered.
also get it directly through you, right?
Correct.
Okay, wonderful. That's probably the best way to do that. So I have known you for several years now, Rachel. Okay.
Yeah.
And I am always amazed at how accurate you are when you are doing a reading. So for our viewers and listeners that don't know you like I do, what inspired you to become a medium?
That's a great question, Estrella. And I feel as if I was projected onto this path more than inspired to pursue it. There definitely are times upon the way in reflection that I see that I said yes and I chose, but I feel like I was directed, maybe a strong word, but I really feel like this happened organically after my son Perry died in 2015. And it was shortly after that I began to have experiences unexpectedly. Not only were these psychic experiences of connecting with him, but seeing him initially with other children who I would come to meet their parents. And also, I noticed there were evidential details, things that I couldn't have known. And it just really grew from there.
And that's where evidential medium comes in, right?
Correct, Henry. Correct.
I've heard
Yes.
that term before. Can you talk a little bit more in depth about what it means
Sure.
for you to be evidential as a medium?
Sure. So evidential implies that I receive information that contains details, specific details about someone's past loved one, things that I couldn't know, things about them, their personality, their life here, things that their people have done for them. And for me, evidential brings in the specifics within that information. Right. And I never know what's going to come through, but I observed early on that this was happening in all my connections, that there would be pieces of information, specific details that I couldn't have known, that the client knew or connected with their loved one in spirit specifically.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. So how do you prepare yourself to receive all these messages?
Yeah, so I prepare myself through meditation, but I feel like that's kind of an intimidating or strong word for what I do at times. I do believe in a personal meditation practice. Having that said, I feel as if and I can, at this point, kind of intuitively do this, but I want my energy to be expanded, right? So I keep myself, and I feel like it's a lifestyle, really, right? I don't feel like it's as dependent upon making a good connection and clear connection is as dependent upon me, spending say 20 minutes meditating before, as it is going into it in a really clear, objective, uplifted, energetic state. So I think that we can all relate to that, right? The times where we feel open, we feel in the flow. And so I feel like this might be different for different people. I know personally, music is important to me, listening to uplifting music, even before I came on here today. Some moving meditation, it might even be like housework and things like that. So I will spend more time kind of in advance preparing myself in that way than I will actually sitting down in a quiet meditation, because I'm not really going within as much as I'm expanding my energy outward to meet spirit.
I love that.
That makes sense.
And that's rare. Usually when you hear a medium talking about their, how they tap in or whatever, it's all very inward. seems. It's so refreshing to hear somebody talk about expanding their awareness, right? And being open. That's a deliberate act, isn't it? Of
It
openness.
is.
And I think
It
that there
is.
are so many of us out here who have outlived our children. And the Lost Travelers Club has coined a new term for us because there hasn't been a word like widow or orphan that we can lean on, right? And so
Right.
we call ourselves peregrines. And the peregrine is a universal symbol. It's a falcon that is native to every continent. So it's universally recognized. It's genderless, right? When you say peregrine, you don't say one gender or another. And almost across the board, it represents resilience and courage and
Mhm.
strength, all those things we need to tap into. And when I looked up the word, I love etymology, the origins of words. Peregrine actually meant a lost traveler in its origin, or a stranger in a field, or a pilgrim on a sacred journey. Aren't we all on our grief journey? Is it a
Wow.
We
sacred
most
journey?
certainly
It
are.
ticks
We
all
are
the boxes. Um,
lone
I have a
travelers.
question about that, being a peregrine, which I now bestow upon you. Um, how has that influenced your mediumship?
Oh, goodness. I don't know if I'm fully aware in all the ways that it does impact my mediumship. I do feel a sense of sometime expansion when it comes to spirit impressing upon me, especially a parent journey here and maybe aspects of that, and they can use in any way they can use my own references personally, right? And so often spirit will use my own references or a remembrance of something that
Mhm.
I've been through on this journey. So I feel like that, in and of itself enriches the connection and the communication and what I am able to deliver, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It makes perfect sense. As a grief educator and coach, I find that many, not just parents, but everyone that has outlived a loved one, the first thing that they want to know is, how are they doing? Where are they? So, have you received glimpses of the afterlife that you would like to share with our audience in order to kind of just maybe enlighten all of us? Because we hear things, but we don't know, right? But with the connection that you have, you might know some things that may be very helpful and quite healing for all of us.
Oh, I would love to. And you may have to cut me off because I feel like I could go on and on here.
We will.
Good. So I feel examples are what comes to mind, and maybe, paint the picture the best. And what comes to mind are recent readings. A couple of days ago, I gave a reading to a mom whose son came through, and he spoke of his afterlife and what he's doing now. And one of the things that he showed me was like a podium in a church. In my tradition of faith that I grew up in, we would call it a pulpit,
Mhm.
that the minister stands behind. And I was kind of like noticing that this isn't about the church so much. It was like more specifically tuned in. He was specifically tuned in. He was showing me this podium and specifically shiny, new. And I felt a sense of pride with this. And I had no idea what it meant. And I delivered the message to his mom. And she said her father, which would be her son's grandfather, who is here and 95 years old, he actually builds podiums, like pulpits, specifically for churches, and donates them to churches, to
Wow.
specific congregations.
Wow.
So that really speaks to how their heaven, like their afterlife, is in part with us here. And I get this a lot. And there seems to be a common thread of what they're doing here and how they're helping us with that's relational. First of all, it's people they love and have this soul to soul connection with. It tends to be in times of maybe when somebody here needs extra support, right? So sometimes when somebody's going through a struggling time, whether it's grief, whether it's financial, whether it's health, they tend to share, this is what I'm doing now. I'm here with them. I'm lending them my energy and infusing them with this, and it's very specific to what the person here might be going through. They also communicate just things. And I feel like the podium with the grandfather building, the podium is a good example, or podiums with things that are giving to others, right? Like when we're in service to others. And I'm sure this is a quite enjoyable experience for his grandfather. Art, music tends to be things that they know that we really love, that's good for our soul, and in ways that they can inspire us when we're in any creative process. I feel like in creative endeavors, even what the two of you are doing here, it would make sense to me that your children are inspiring you and working with you in your creativity and the way you serve others through yourselves and through your platforms. If that makes sense.
Neither of us remember how we even met. I mean, we just connected out of the blue, and we became fast friends, and we just felt, both of us, this, call it a compulsion, that we have to work together. We have work to do together here.
Oh,
it's all about unlearning,
It is. A spiritual connection.
Yeah.
A spiritual
we know that our
connection.
kids are conspiring somewhere and make this happen.
Absolutely. And would you want me to continue with other, like I said, cut me off. Go ahead.
Okay, we're a little frozen right now.
Oh, do we freeze?
No, he didn't cut you off. No, he won't do that, because what you're saying is really
did.
important.
Maybe they're showing off now that they cut me off, right?
Probably. What signs do our loved ones who have passed give us in order to communicate
before
with
I got
them?
on today, I just randomly was seeing in my mind's eye like white feathers today and dimes, like coins. So these are common signs, but I really believe that signs can be unique and personal as well, right? For somebody, maybe flamingos are their sign, right? For somebody, it might be shamrocks. And not only that, but our loved ones are aware of what we're doing. It can give us new and unique signs as we go along. If we're going to be going on vacation, maybe they send us a seashell that we find, and that looks just like one that they collected, that dad or mom still have on the shelf, and looks exactly like it. And at a time when you felt their presence as well, right? Or it brings their presence in so that you feel it when you find the sign. Maybe heart-shaped rocks. Birds of a feather, I'm hearing. So birds, feathers, as I already said, but I really feel like there's no, what do we call this? I don't put it in a box, right? I don't feel like there's, okay, you're either getting cardinals or you're getting feathers or you're getting pennies. There's so much more, right? I feel like they really are limitless. And really some of it's just dependent upon how aware we are, right? That they can send, if we believe they can only send cardinals, then we're going to be waiting for the cardinal, right? But if we believe they can use anything to really connect with us and say hello and bring us into that feeling of expansion and feeling their presence with us, I feel like that's really their ultimate goal, is that we feel them, that we feel their presence with us. I feel like that seems to be most meaningful to them. And sometimes the signs do that, right?
Well, and it's really up to us to be open to everything, right? To the mystery of it all, to embrace the mystery. And anybody who has a loved one who's passed, even a pet, right? The feeling of connection. That feeling where your heart beats just in a different way, and maybe a smile, maybe a song comes on the radio, or maybe your dog looks at you in a particular way, right? You feel something. And what I tell my clients is, every single time that you feel that this might be a sign, 100% guarantee it is.
Yes. Oh, I love that, Henry. and that you share that with people. I absolutely agree. And
Yeah.
speaking of pets, like pets are very sensitive to spirit, and they can be a
Oh,
sign in and of themselves, right? Like pay
Yeah.
attention to when Trixie is like looking or staring off and outside the window in the back of the house there, and they'll show me, the dog sees me, and so they'll use pets and babies too, young
Yeah.
children,
Yeah.
to validate to us, as our own mediums, really.
Right.
that is very true. As a matter of fact, one of my chihuahuas, Ty, Ty, Henry, after Bert had passed, yeah, he's always barking and biting.
Yeah.
After Bert at me, after Bert transitioned, okay, Bert had a specific place where he would always sit when he was visiting. And a few months after he passed, I see Ty staring at that same location, and immediately he started barking and barking and barking. And I didn't see anything there, but I knew there was. I knew there was.
You felt it.
So,
Yeah,
oh, I felt it, but definitely,
Yeah.
love
that
that.
expression. And so I listen, I watch Ty,
Yeah.
I observe what he does.
Yeah.
And there are times that he will just stare. And then he will growl at something, and I'm thinking, there's nothing here. So,
Yeah.
but there
Yeah.
is. There is.
Absolutely. Bert, I believe that, a lot of times I'll also share, like, when the dog does stare, when you notice this sign, next time you see this happening, take a minute and say hello to your loved one, take a breath, and really you'll feel their presence even more so.
Absolutely.
We've been groomed and we've been programmed to think of death as an end. And in my experience, I can't speak for others, but for me, it's an evolution. It's been an evolution in my relationship with my son, right?
Yeah.
And it's fascinating to see how, especially in the world of men, fathers who are expected culturally to not be vocal about their grief, to
Right.
not be vocal about their emotions, and to sort of sublimate everything and hold everything inside. I had an image come to me once of the only way I could describe it is a soul womb.
Mm.
And it's where, men don't get to carry our children in utero because we don't have a utero. And when our children have passed, we get to carry them in our bodies.
Mm.
We get to gestate this new life,
Love that.
bring them. But what gets born into the world is not a new baby. It's a new you because of the transformative quality of grief. Right. And to be open to that, to be understanding. My question related to that is, how do you meet people who are closed, people who are programmed or mired in their programming? And religion does this, culture does this, family generations do this in family cultures. How do you meet people who are, call it skeptical, or in some other way closed off to those possibilities of connection?
Oh, that's a great question, Henry. First, I have to say how profound I found your words to be, and I got chills, full body, with first the word evolution, using that to describe your healing and growth and expansion. And I as soon as you said evolution, I felt like maybe your son spirit was putting it like in large letters, all caps, for other people to hear that. It's really profound. And when you said it's not a birth of a baby, but a new you.
Mm-hmm.
That's so profound. Really love that.
It's really beautiful. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
We
it
can
is.
carry our children in us and that's, we always talk about the sadness and the feeling of loss, that we've lost something. Well, I don't feel like I've lost anything. The essence of who Cameron is eternal.
Right.
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 And so he's not like a set of keys or a favorite scarf. I know precisely where he is. I didn't lose him. His physical state is no longer here, but his hand is in every aspect of my life. And because I'm open to that, because I see it and feel it,
Yes.
and it
That's so
comes into my
beautiful.
dream life as well, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I see on especially on Facebook, there are a lot of men's groups for grieving fathers, and the burden, the stones that they carry, the
Mm.
vortex of mourning that they are stuck in without any way to get out because we have no skills. Grief is a universal life skill, but nobody teaches it. We're trying to, right,
Right.
Estrella? And you too,
Right.
right?
Right. And
And
what a gift you give them to bring hope to
but you
them.
need a horse
Beautiful.
of water. How do you bring them across into
Yeah.
an
Yeah.
open?
So with skeptics. So I like skeptics, right?
Mhm.
Because I feel like a reading, and sometimes I'll just tell people when they say, "Hey, what can I do to help my husband or my child who is skeptical?" Even though I believe, first of all, I think the best thing is their own personal reading, right? What I have also observed is they don't always have to have a reading. So I gave a reading like 2 days ago to a mom whose son came through, and he brought through messages for members of the family,
Mhm.
right? And so she has since reached out to me and said that the things that didn't make sense to her and made sense to almost like each of the kids.
Uh,
And we got to the end of the reading, and she specifically asked about her oldest son who is living and if his brother had messages for him. And he gave me some validations of his personality and how he's around him. And he said, basically, that he knows he's not open to him, but there's no judgment there.
right.
I felt this sense of this young man here being very driven, very focused, maybe very type A, I don't know, but just that sense of like very successful, and there's nothing wrong with that. But
Mhm.
yeah, and she did say in the follow-up too that you were right, or he was right, that her son wasn't open to it. And if
Mhm.
I have learned, the mind is a very powerful thing, and we see this collectively, we see this individually with people that we know, that if they don't want to believe, they won't,
Right.
right? If they're not ready to believe, they won't.
Right.
But I also like to reassure people that seeds are being planted, right? So even in that reading with the information that was shared, even if there was resistance there, seeds were planted, right? To maybe to produce, I'm seeing a sunflower now, but to produce the fruit at a later date, so to speak. And not only that, but we have all had personal experiences with our loved ones, right? Without needing a medium. And I feel like spirit knows how to get through to people. So
Mhm.
sometimes when there's maybe resistance due to religious programming, for example, someone might be more open to a dream visit, right? Or to words, maybe a pastor speaking to them at the right time. So I believe spirit knows what we need. And it's interesting that they don't see it in a judgmental way. They just want us to know that, they are okay. Right. And some people have a heart, can accept that. I see this especially when people are very religious. They can accept that they're okay and alive and in heaven in spirit, but maybe draw the line with, oh, but they can't be here or they're not safe. I can't feel them here. And so
Right.
then they get in their own way because they have their own resistance. But again, spirit can plant seeds. They can come to them in the dream state. People, have experiences of waking up and seeing, maybe like as an apparition, if you will, their person,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Things that are signs that are unexplainable. I feel like that spirit works that way through people that might be their loved ones who might be
Yeah.
skeptical, even
Yeah.
though they don't seem to have the need to prove to everybody that this exists. They are concerned that their loved ones know they're with them.
So, what are some of the myths that are floating out there about mediumship that you would like to kind of just set the record straight on?
Oh my goodness. So there's so many. Where do we start? Again, cut me off.
No.
Well, that's understanding you can't speak for all mediums. You can speak for your own, the myths.
That's
Exactly. We could go on, and other people would bring up things that I might not, think about. But let's talk about skepticism first, because that's in my mind. That, she Googled the information. Right. And I think because we are in an age where so much information is accessible, Facebook, Google, like skeptics will say that. The interesting thing is, when somebody has their own personal connection, they feel it. They know the things that come through that are very personal to them, right? They know that it goes beyond something, information that I might be able to Google, right? I'm not relaying facts and dates or what you just posted on Facebook, right? And I find it's interesting because with the history of spiritualism, which mediumship is, that's considered mediumship, it used to be a lot of like that type of information that would come through, like a platform demonstration. A lot of this originated like in England and before the time of any technology. And I have often contemplated this and how I see mediumship has evolved. And I believe because spirit knows different information, it's like they have to be creative sometimes with what they bring through. But even just the evidential pieces may not be like, their information that could be Googleable public, right? They're not going to do that. And I find too, people will often tell me, I can feel this amazing connection, bring through all this information, and maybe they share the reading with somebody, and maybe it's the husband's grandfather, Kenneth, who came through, who there's no way she could have known that validates. And it's not that grandfather or great grandfather Kenneth needed to come through and say hello for himself personally. Maybe they didn't even know each other here, but it might be that little piece of information that proves, maybe it's not to my client, but to somebody they share it with. Oh, that is. So again, I'm getting more into like the validation, but so I feel like somebody, having their own reading makes a big difference. And of course, you're not going to convince somebody who the myth, if they want to believe the myth of that, we're just like looking up and researching and finding all the information, let alone like how I could even remember all of that information in a reading, right? And then there's I think the myths about maybe more stigma, right? Around like, okay, well, I do believe this, but it's not from God, or it's evil, or it's familial spirits. I get that a lot, right? And the podium example is a good example of like the young man that's supporting his grandfather, very, I don't know, religious, but spiritual for sure. I don't know the man personally, but he's, donating podiums to churches, and I don't know, there's so much information that comes through, and it's only healing and it's only loving. When you think about the fruits of the spirit, if somebody believes the scripture, it all aligns with the fruit of the spirit, right? The information that comes through and the effect that it has on people.
True, very true. So your work, this magnificent work that you are doing, how would you label it other than medium? Don't label it mediumship.
Oh yeah, taking away that word.
How would you? Yeah.
Healing. I feel like the purpose is to bring healing, and of course not just through me, right? I'm a vessel. Communication, connection, soul to soul connection, communication that brings healing to the people here. And it's very, very personal and very relational. Every connection is very different.
I have a question about healing. This has come up a lot in our retreats. It's come up in a lot of conversations. In my experience, I have not seen anything to indicate that there is healing possible from grief. That the journey itself, depending on how you meet it and who you're walking with at any given time, can be a balm, right? It can be a comfort. It can be, but there's no healing from grief as far as I can see. And yet that word's used quite a lot. To me, there's no end game. There's a difference between mourning, which is a temporary and passive state, you can't do anything with it but be in it.
Mm.
And then you cross through a very thin membrane from mourning into grieving. And grieving is permanent and active. You can channel your grief. You can channel through your grief into really wonderful things. And so, I don't know, I'd love to hear your perspective on healing, because you've used it a
Sure.
couple of times, and I hear it a lot in our circles.
Yeah. That's interesting. And that really resonates with me, what you say, Henry. So I think it's a matter of like how the semantics, right? Like how we're defining the terms that we use, right? And I find that there's a lot of inconsistency too with that. And even a lot of people will use the word grief interchangeably with mourning, where I might not use grief for mourning, that type of thing. So I guess if I just get to the experience itself, I feel like it can allow for transformation, for that process where we're able to transform our grief, right? So for me, that is a healing process, even though I don't believe there's an endpoint or final destination. I don't believe that we get to a point where we're like, oh, I healed. Like I'm healed from my son dying
anymore.
I don't feel like I'll ever get right. I think so. If we use healing in the context or implication that it means I'm over it now, I don't believe in that.
But
right?
why do people ask that of us? When are you going to get over it? When are you going to move on? Right?
Right.
Get those questions from family.
It's an ongoing
You hear that a
process.
lot.
Ongoing. I do
It's
believe
been
that.
11 years for me, and I still miss,
Of course.
and I still long for my son's presence. And of course,
Absolutely.
I do get visits, dream visits that are very vivid, and that really brings me comfort. But I know for a fact that what has healed has been the emotional triggers. I don't trigger like I used to. I may feel a little something, but it's manageable. And I can do something, go out, enjoy a movie, and enjoy it without feeling that internal pain that I used to feel, because it was so crippling that I couldn't do anything. And I'm sure that many parents feel that way.
Absolutely. And I think it is important to make that distinction between healing or transformation, between trauma and grief, right? I don't know for sure, but I don't experience those triggers from trauma that I used to. So I'm likely to say maybe I have healed from that, but it doesn't mean I can't imagine never missing my son's physical presence or never being sad that he's not physically here. Right. And it is something that maybe that isn't the front of my consciousness as much, even the sadness, but it's there. And I'm at a place in my journey where I'm okay with that, because grief is much gentler now. Right. And for me, it's like now, I don't want, it makes me sad to think of me never not missing him. Right. Like, So I think it's just semantics. So when I use the term healing to describe that transformational process that allows us to use and use this for good, what we've been through. And I believe a certain amount of healing one has had to experience, but maybe another word would be transformation that we have allowed ourselves to undergo. And I think this really touches upon too, that even in mediumship, the work I do, I can't determine what a person does with their experience. Right. Like I can't, a reading isn't, like a good reading isn't an indication that the person will allow themselves to do the inner work.
That's right.
Right.
Well,
in the inner
the tools, we are all of us on the path. We are all deficient in our grief skills. That's why these conversations, the courage of the peregrine to step into the limelight and make public our journey so that everyone listening knows they're not alone. The grief to me is a solitary one. you're on the path. You're only grieving the way that you can grieve, right? With the skill.
Right. And there's no
People
spiritual bypassing.
No
No,
no
no.
hierarchy, more evolved
No.
or more healed or less.
No.
Frequency. And that frequency is love. And it's how we amplify that love.
Exactly.
And that's really what we can do with our grief. Once you have passed from that first initial shock, even if the passing was expected, you don't know how you're going to react to it. You don't know how you're going to feel the emptiness of it until you feel it. And then you move through those feelings and you get through your mourning period. Sometimes it takes a year. Sometimes it takes several years for some people. And then you know when you've crossed that threshold into grieving, right? And then it's a completely different game. It's like you've settled into it in a way that can propel you forward, right? If the one frequency is love, even frequency requires energy to move it. And that energy is trust, is how I see it. Trust, whether that's love between people, between nations, between governments, it is all about trust being the energy that moves love. And I think that what I see in your work and what I really appreciate, Rachel, about what you do is that you create an atmosphere of trust, to trust not only what you're feeling in your work, trust what your clients are feeling in their work, in their grief work. And trust in the process, that it will unfold as it is meant to. If you and Estrella and I were meant to be having a different conversation in a different space with somebody else, we would be. But the truth is that all three of our biographies and the biographies of our parents and our grandparents and our children, who are now our ancestors, all prepared us, led us to this moment and this conversation.
That's right.
That means something to me. I think it's really important that we all pause and notice that if we were meant to be in a different space, in a different situation, in a different place on our path, we would be, right? Embrace the transience of this moment, that it's just a moving space between what has been and what will be.
Oh, I love that, Henry. And your words provide to your listeners and the people whose lives you touch such a gentle allowance, for the feelings, allowance for the experience. Because I really believe if anything impedes that trust is that the fear, maybe even of the terminology, right? I don't want to be grieving forever. And it's like, well, what if grief is changes, right? And softens.
And friendly companion. What if you embrace it, put your arm around grief, let it be your life's companion? It can be
exactly. And I tell you, it's something that's even inspired and motivated me to continue doing this work during the difficult times when I could be doing something else. So that's grief, right?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
I used to think that grief changed me. But, and I've shared this with you, Henry, that I really now believe that grief reveals who we truly are and who we are meant to be, because there is so many preconceived ideas, beliefs that are just piled on top of each other on us from the time that we are children. And we don't know who we are anymore. And I think that is part of the anxiety that so many people are feeling, that it's part of the, I guess, fear, because they don't know who they are. And once through my agony, because it was agony, I don't know how else to describe it, I began to shed those layers that were no longer serving me, because in order for me to understand the new path that was in front of me, I had to really be willing to have those removed. And there is nothing that can wake you up more or faster than feeling pain. When you feel that pain, you say, well, what can I do to not feel this anymore? Do I need to learn? What do I need to do? And I was willing to do anything in order to feel at peace and not be hurting like I was. And instead, what I found is that I became who I was always intended to be, or who I always intended to be, and a more peaceful person, a little more agreeable, maybe. But it's and I can live joyfully with who I am, and I don't feel like I need to change who I am and become somebody else. No. I am who I was meant to be from the beginning, and Bert's passing was my wake-up call in many, many ways. So
We're
I'm
all
very,
teachers,
very,
we're all students. We're all here to learn.
yeah, we're all teachers and
Right?
students. I like to think of myself more of a student
Yeah,
than a teacher.
that's right.
Okay, well, we don't want to close without you telling our viewers where they can find you, where your website, and we're going to add all of that at the end. But go ahead and share that, and then Henry will close.
Okay. Thank you so much. RachelPearson.net is my website, and all my offerings are on there. I also have Facebook and Instagram pages, Rachel Pearson Spiritual Medium and Rachel Pearson Medium.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for this special time. It was great having a conversation. Will you come back sometime? And
absolutely. I would be honored, and it would be a pleasure.
Great. Well, we'll be excited to welcome you back. If you are looking for ways to unlearn things that you have been conditioned, programmed, or you're feeling you're stuck in a vortex that you just can't break out of, come visit us at Healing, Harmony, and Hope, our page on Facebook, and keep tuning in because we've got a lot of great conversations. If you would like to be a guest, or if you have an idea for a topic or suggest a guest as wonderful as Rachel Pearson, which she has no equal, please let us know. Give us a comment down below, and we will do our very best to bring you what you wish. Thank you, Rachel, again. Thanks, Estrella. Bye, everybody.
Thank you both.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.